All right, hello, welcome back. So, as the title of this episode says, I am still wrestling with this wedding portrait. It is quickly turning into the most overworked wedding portrait in my fairly long history doing wedding paintings. But it's got to be done right. This is a broadcast that I promise I would rather not do. I would rather you not see this because I would rather you not know how bad I screw up sometimes. But on the other hand, if I can be instructive and encouraging, that's more important. And it's not so much that I'm not really talking about pride. I'm about you seeing it. It's more I'm irritated that I'm not better than I am. That is the truth. Now that's the bad news. The good news is at least I feel like I know how. Hi, Ria. I'm going to say Ria. It might be Raya, but I think Ria. Hey, look, thank you so much. Sure, it does look pretty good, except that when I put the woman's portrait right next to it, and her name is Cameron. Well, first of all, I printed this off this morning. I'll show you what this is in a minute. First of all, when I look here, I can't see much. I see a few hints of things that might be right or wrong. So here's what I do. In my computer, actually in my phone, I flop the images. So now I'm seeing a mirror image of the photograph next to my painting. Does that make sense? And in a mirror image, because I'm blind to my mistakes this way. So again, you don't have to have a telephone, a phone, a camera phone to do everything I'm doing, but it sure does help because a mirror will work. Mirror is the shortcut. But when I flop it, when I see the mirror image, all of a sudden I go, oh my goodness, buddly, 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 buddly. In fact, I've actually written down all the buddly, buddly, buddlies. Okay? And let me share those with you right now. So, first of all, I started making notes, and I actually took this, put it over here. You can see I did all kinds of things. And here are my notes. Anyway, so here I saw the mistakes in mirror image and then recorded them on the correcting the correct facing the correct direction. So here we go. I've got 10 different changes that need to be made on her face. Does that make sense? I'm going to fold this in half because I don't really need all of that anymore. In fact, all I need is this one panel right here. I might even be able to, can I? I'm looking for a piece of tape. Yeah, maybe I can. I'm not sure that tape will stick because I have a thin layer of wet paint, oil paint on the canvas over here. One of the things I did, by the way, is just a few minutes ago, I darkened the area. I had a real problem. She was light and the background behind her was light. So she was disappearing. But because he's wearing white here, he's dark here, here's light. Anyway, I decided this does look better. So I've darkened the background behind her and sort of kept it slightly lighter behind him. But that's another subject. Okay, here we go. 1 through 10. Number 1. And this, by the way, this, now some of my students need to see this because, first of all, you'll be going, you told us not to do that. I know, but there are times when you have to. And the time is when you're doing a portrait that is so disgustingly smaller than you should. You should never do, like I think about John Singer Sargent. Would he ever do this? Well, he would never screw up this bad, but I also think it's a very good possibility that he would never, I don't know, he would never try to do a portrait this size. Maybe he would, and even if he did, he'd do outrageously better than I am doing. But I've gotten myself into this pickle by advertising my services that I do wedding portraits live, and of course, this is not live now. Okay, number 1, her eyebrow needed to come down a little bit more. Number 2, this corner of her eyebrow also comes down too far. So that's number 1, and number 2 is a pretty easy one. That's taken care of. Now, number 3 is shave off the top dark area of her eyelid. What was I saying? Something about John Singer Sargent. Would he even get himself in this predicament? I don't know. 1, 2, 3 are done. Now, number 4, here's the biggie. Her mouth is too high. Her entire mouth needs to be lowered. I know I was saying that my students are saying, hey, this is the absolute ultimate in tongue painting. Those of you who don't know what I mean by tongue painting, if you continue to watch my videos, it's holding a brush like this with your right hand, prominent hand, and sticking out your tongue and being a control freak. I mean, that is what I'm doing here. I don't think that I have any alternative. That is what I have to do to get this painting, this portrait. Portraits are a different animal, of course. You can't be, so to speak, impressionistic. There's a reason Monet didn't do portraits, and he was an impressionist. Okay, now let me zero in here, because I do want you to see this. I have to lower her entire mouth, and that makes me go, oy vey, oh, good grief, you're kidding me. I have to lower the entire mouth. Look at all that. Look at how many lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different lines need to be lowered. I want to show you, just in case you ever have to do anything like this, it's not quite as bad as it sounds, okay? Not quite. Because if her mouth, which I think her mouth is pretty accurate, I have a slight modification, is number 5. The top corner of it needs to come down, but I'll do that. So the mouth is pretty accurate, just the whole thing needs to be lowered. And before you, like me, collapse into despair, there's a way to do that. First of all, if the mouth needs to be lowered, you start I do this with, in portrait, you have to do this kind of stuff sometimes. I do this with eyes, eyebrows, noses. In this case, it's a mouth. So you start, if it's being lowered, you start with the lowest part. How much lower? I'm thinking a scant 1/16 of an inch. By the way, while I'm on the subject, what subject, you say? While I am on the subject of fixing portrait mistakes, let me go back to yesterday. If you were with me, I cheated at the outset of this portrait process by doing a pretty sophisticated grid. Are you with me? I did the grid system. And one of the things I failed to say yesterday when I was talking about the grid system is that, oh, by the way, after you do all the work of doing a grid, guess what? It's still not that easy, because all a grid will do for you is get you close. And so here I am proving that very point. Okay, hang on, let me hold my breath for a second. Here I am proving that very point, because after all of my cheating yesterday, I'm still not right. Now, how can that be? How can, after all that cheating, how can I be so far off? The answer is quite simple. First of all, I was drawing with a tool very much like this. Look at the width, the point. Let me see if I find a sharp one. There you go. The point of this pencil is much wider than the adjustment that I'm making on her mouth. Do you understand? I'm lowering her mouth about a 32nd of an inch, and the end of this pencil is about 1.5 32nds of an inch, if you catch my drift. I don't want to say 3/64. That's ridiculous, but that's what we're talking about. Okay, so I've lowered 2 lines so far. I lowered her bottom lip, and I lowered the dark part inside her mouth. Now the next thing to do is to lower the far side of her lip, which is right here. Are you with me? Now I need to mix up, which I might have already on my brush, a color, the color of the background. Whatever color this is right here. Ooh, good. Pretty close. I'm going to lighten it just a tiny bit. Very close. So now I lower the far side. I want to make that even lighter. I'm lowering the far side of her mouth. Do you understand? So I am being very scientific, so to speak, technical. I'm lowering each part of her mouth one step at a time, starting with the bottom of her mouth. Okay, now I'm up all the way up to her teeth. So I'm going to grab and you can see I'm using these ridiculously small brushes. Oh my goodness. Ask me if this is fun. No, this is not fun. I'm not doing it because it's fun. I'm doing it because it needs to be done. And because my ineptitude is making this into a bigger job than I wish it were. Okay, so I'm up to her teeth, lowering about a 32nd of an inch. By the way, there's a real temptation when you're painting portraits to make the whites of the eyes and the teeth too white. So that what I've got on my brushes right now, my brush is not pure white. It's a little bit of a dirty white. Kind of neutral gray. A little bit warm gray, I guess. Okay, now lower her teeth about a 32nd of an inch, I'm guessing. When I'm finishing this step right here, she should look quite buck-toothy. Yeah, she does. That's good. Okay, so now the next step is I want to keep mixing up, different colors over here. I'm not going to bother showing you my palette. Next step is to lower her top lip again, roughly a 32nd of an inch. Is this driving you crazy? It should be. So when I finish that step, she should kind of look like she has way too big of a top lip, kind of a fat lip, and she does, so that's good. It means I'm still kind of on target. I'm going to lower the top of her top lip. There we go. That's pretty close. And what I want to show you, and again, for a portrait this size, it's about as accurate as I can get. I'm not sure that I can get more accurate than that. That's just about does me in for accuracy. And I feel, at least today, at the moment, I feel pretty. Of course, I went to bed last night feeling halfway confident. And look, I got up this morning and went, oh my goodness, what am I thinking? So there you go. So the mirror image trick is good. Also, a night's sleep in the middle of your portrait is also a very good strategy. So why don't I lower the rest of her face? Well, because going back to, let me see if I can, yeah, here we go. So when I looked at these photographs, these comparisons, I saw that her top lip, and what is the philbum? The distance between her top lip and her nose in my painting was too skinny, too narrow, too close. Her mouth was too close to her nose. Are you with me? So, and her chin in my painting was too deep. So all I had to do was move her entire mouth down. And I would like you to see that in spite of all my griping and groaning and complaining, it didn't really take me that long to move her entire mouth down. And so that's sort of what I want to preach to myself, is say, come on, Nelson, quit your whining. It's only going to take probably, that was less than 10 minutes probably, right? In the grand scheme of things, spending 10 minutes more on a painting is not that bad. So there you go. I hope that's instructive. I should probably end this broadcast right there, because I'm going to do the same thing now on the man. Okay, on the groom. So there he is. Here's here's my painting, picture of my painting, and picture of the picture. Photograph and photograph of my painting, side by side. And I couldn't see very, very many mistakes. But when I flopped it, and again, my phone can do this, yours can too, just look for the apps that can do this. When I flopped it, then I saw several little mistakes, corrections. And I actually have 12, so then I don't mark it here because then I would have to translate. You see, it's hard to go from here to here. Does that make sense? Because this is mirror image. But once I see the mistakes here, I mark them down here, and it's easy to go from here to here. Now, believe it or not, I was a lot more intimidated about the changes I had to make on the bride. And by the way, I'm not done here. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4. I've done 4. I've got 6 more changes to do on her to fix her up. But I was much more intimidated by those changes. These changes are all, for some reason, impressed me as simpler. So I don't even need to show you those. I just want to show you the process. I'll go just a little bit longer here. First of all, the background behind the bride's face, I need it to be just the right exact value. And I've got a little bit of lightness coming in here that I don't like. So let me come in here. And also I'm going to come back with some whiter white on her teeth, which is a nice mistake to have because it's a lot easier to get whiter than it is to try to dim down something that's overdone. Okay, so I'm going to paint this with my left hand. That's where the end of the brush, I want the end of the brush pointing toward the front of her teeth. Okay, let's go. Oh, almost, that's okay. She's a little bit buck-toothy. Again, it's nuts trying to do a portrait this size, about the size of see how big she is? That's crazy. Okay, I know one thing, part of the reason she's looking buck-toothed is the teeth behind her front teeth are not quite bright enough. So I think this will fix that. It's almost fixing it. And again, anytime I want to look at, a photograph of her, there we go. By the way, part of the reason I've had so much trouble with this particular portrait is the photographs that I'm working from are not quite optimal. The lighting that exists in the photograph is not the lighting that I'm indicating in the painting. That is not a good situation. Okay, I didn't put this on my list of corrections, but I'm having serious second thoughts about her eye. Let me show you the photograph again. In the photograph, she's looking out this way, like if her face is pointed at 12 o'clock, she's looking at about 2 o'clock out this way. I changed it to try to make it look like she's looking at her husband, but she's still not looking at her husband. She's looking at about 1 o'clock. She's looking off this way, missing his head. Do you know what I'm talking about? So she's still not looking at him, and that's irritating me a little bit. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to do an experiment right here. I want to see, can I turn her eyeball even more toward her husband? And I think I just did it. I mean, I know I can do it. Will it look good? That's what I'm not sure about. So I'm moving the white of her eye that way. And I think that worked, except that now that I've done that, there's the Welcome to the World of Portraiture. It's like a series of, there's a domino effect. Now that I've done that, I need to move her bottom eyelid. It needs to come up higher. And her top eyelid does as well. Let me look at that now. It's still not perfect, but I do believe it's slightly better than it was. And here we go again, now that I've moved that. You see, a person turning her eyeball this way or that way has an impact on her eyelids. And so now I'm trying to get her eyelids to work with the new position of her eyeball. This is nuts. This is just nuts. Whew, but I think that's successful. Okay, now let me change number 5 is I have to change the shape of her mouth, which is I need to shave a little bit off that corner. So it turns down a little bit more. Let me compare that to the photograph. Ooh, even a little bit more. Good. And again, I can say all of this ridiculous stuff that I'm doing kind of goes under the heading of what does an artist do to make a living? Sort of a wisecrack statement I've said for years. What does an artist do to make a living? And the answer is anything he or she has to do, so to speak. In other words, you go to great lengths sometimes just to get the job done. Just to get the job done. I'm making a change here that I didn't document. That is, I'm making the front of her face. Now that I've darkened the background, I want to make the front of her face slightly lighter. And this is dangerous because there's no indication of this whatsoever in the photograph. Yikes! Again, part of I think the lesson perhaps I should be learning from this struggle is that in the future, if when I've taken all the photographs, the 100 pictures of the bride and groom during their first dance, if I'm not convinced that I've really got a good enough photograph, then I need to I need to interrupt the bride and groom, which is I hate to do, but I need to interrupt them in spite of that and say, you know what, I just didn't get a good enough portrait. I need to have you come over here and I need to take a better picture. Good news is I am liking her face much better than I did just a few minutes ago. So there's her face. Now I've changed her eye, and that's a little dangerous, but I think it's okay. So I'm down to change number 5. I did number 6. You can understand why I would need to write all these down, right? Hey, let me mention something real quickly. If you follow me often, then you know one of my mantras, I say this all the time, is you get dark with transparents and light with opaques. If you want some part of your canvas painting to be darker, you do it with transparent color, right? Okay, and the name of the book that I'm working on is called The Breakable Laws of Painting. Now, I haven't decided in my book if I'm going to, with each law, if I'm going to give how would this law be broken. I don't know. But here's one. Here's an exception to that rule. Sometimes you get dark with opaque, which is mud, by the way, but sometimes it has to be done. And the answer is, or the occasion when that needs to be done is basically when you're doing portraiture. When you're doing portraits, sometimes you cannot get darker with transparent because the transparent will just be too dark. So portraiture is so much more refined, sophisticated, subtle than all other forms of artwork. That there are times that you need to do dark on a person's face with an opaque darkness because it's a transparent would be just too strong. Okay, so that's an interesting, for those of you who follow me, that's one of those places where there's an exception to the rule. Good to know that. Again, so the exception is you get, the rule is you get light with opaques, dark with transparents. Except sometimes in portraiture, you get dark with opaques because it's so much more subtle. And the transparent is just too wild of a beast. You can't be subtle enough with transparent colors, transparent dark. So you have to go opaque dark because of the subtlety required sometimes for portraiture. Okay, and that's exactly what you just saw me do right there, by the way, down here on her neck. Somewhere I got darker with opaque. Okay, so I've done number 6, now number 7. Oh my goodness, her earring! I couldn't believe this one. This was the one mistake that was, had me slap my head. Her earring's in the wrong place. Now, how did I do that with a grid? I don't know, but I did. So let's get that taken care of quickly. Mixing up some transparent dark over here, because if you're moving something, see there, her earring, as you can see, is dark and light. You don't want to do the dark first. I mean, you don't want to do the light first and then the dark. So you do the dark first and then the light. It will not have the same look if you do the light first and then dark afterwards. Okay, I believe it's moving. Boy, that's way off. Now I need to come mix up a flesh tone. Oh, by the way, let me show you a little trick. Sometimes when you're making changes in an oil painting, if there's any thickness in the painting underneath, you need to scrape it off with a knife. I happen to be using just my Swiss Army knife. Use a curved blade, not an X-Acto knife, because the X-Acto knife will gouge in your canvas. Look at that. That's just about perfect. Just about. Not quite, but pretty close. Let me get a little bit closer. It should be done with that little correction. Again, this photograph shows you how much liberty I'm taking with the lighting of her face, which I do not like doing that at all. I do not like taking that much liberty. And again, there you go. So it was a sub-satisfactory photograph that I was working from. That may be the hard lesson that I'm learning on this particular. And I'm sorry, you guys, some of you are probably leaving comments. I don't know. Leaving chats, and I'm completely missing them because, as you can see, I'm just swallowing this. My brushes here. I'm right up on my canvas. I've never done a broadcast with you, with my audience this close here. The camera tripod is actually between my legs. That's how close. Okay, number 7, done. Number 8, oh yeah, good grief. This was another one. Again, how did I get this wrong? I don't know, but there you go. It turns out the grid method is not foolproof because I'm a fool and I screwed up. Okay, the back of her head is just too close to the front of her head. How about that for a descriptive? There we go. I love her hair, by the way. I'm talking here like a woman, so to speak. Maybe a man too. I don't know if I'm being sexist with that comment, but I don't usually pay attention to women's hair. But for as a painter, blonde hair is kind of fun. Maybe it's because I have, Northern European roots. I don't know if that's why. I like doing everybody's hair. Don't get me wrong. But it's blonde, so the highlights are just particularly fun for an artist. And she had it arranged. She had long hair, but it was all done up, the way women in the West do when they are being formal. They don't have their hair down; they have their hair up. And my impression it was quite attractive. So that's better. That's better. Okay, 8, number 9. Where are we? So here's 8, and here's number 10. Baby, I missed number 9. Okay, I missed it. Number, um, the next one is actually a change on on the back of her shoulder. There's a little bit of a hump right there. And again, it's questionable how much will that impact similitude or likeness. Will that make it look more like her? My guess is that it will, actually, to those who know her. Um, there. Let me take a breath. Oh, I see a tiny change I need to make, and it's back up here on her eye. She's looking a little Egyptian, if you know what I mean. Like with that exaggerated makeup thing, the tail of her eye going way back. And I need to cut that off a little bit because, yeah, it is not realistic. There we go. Okay, now just one more thing. Still on her eye. She's wearing, as you can see, quite a bit of dark eyeshadow. Again, which is in our culture, that's traditional. When a woman dresses up, she wears fairly dark eyeshadow makeup. And I need to add the hint. I think I'd like to add the hint of her upper eyelid. So in other words, give some thickness to that. Okay, let's try that. I think I'm okay. And while I'm on it, I love this stroke of light right here on her top eyelid, but it's too sharp. So let me soften that a little bit. These are things I did not have on my list. How's her nose? How's her forehead? I think they're okay. I'm going to blend it a little bit. Her jaw, bottom lip needs to come forward just a little bit. Again, good grief. I hope somebody here is benefiting from this nonsense because this is ridiculous. This is just flat ridiculous to do this kind of detail. But I have literally, I've painted myself into a corner by trying to do portraits of this size. That's my excuse. I'm sticking with it. Yeah, it's irritating the fire out of me that I'm having to spend so much time at this. But better to spend time and be happy with the product. Whew. Okay, I've got here at this size again. The bumps in the canvas. I'm sure you understand this. The bumps in the canvas are larger than some of the features on these people's faces, like that one right there. So I just had to cover up that little bump outside her bottom eyelid on the far side. Okay, now it's too dark, so I can come in and lighten it some more. Is this good and boring to you? It's good and boring to me. Oh my goodness. And again, I guess this whole rigmarole, everything I'm doing here would kind of go under the general heading of, oh my goodness, what does an artist do to get the job done? Again, anything he or she has to do. That's what we do. I do think that most non-artists, I remember when I was younger, much younger, and looking at, in those days, I was an illustrator, and looking at what some immature, older illustrators went through to get the job done, I was rather shocked, dismayed, amazed, respectful, like, golly, I can't believe they did all that. Like one example that comes to mind, I think of James, oh man, I'm not going to forget his name, am I? The guy that did Dinotopia, the Dinotopia guy. I'm still subscribed to him, James. Anyway, and so this is not when I was a young person. This is quite not that recent, not that long ago. He was demonstrating how he would do his illustrations, and he would build quite extravagant art, very accurate little models of the town that he was going to create, and then he would take pictures of it. And I've got a mistake here. Here we go. Here's the kind of thing that happens when you keep fiddling. I've got her forehead rounded, and she does not have a rounded forehead. It comes in. She has a brow arch. Is that what that's called? Brow ridge. And by the way, anything I say about this woman, it's not critical. She's very attractive, but it's my job to analyze and understand what's going on. James Gurney, that's the name. And he would build these extravagant constructions just to photograph them, just to see the play of light on them. And I remember, well, another example is Maxfield Parrish, who was a big muse of mine for many, many years. Would do the same thing. He would build rather extravagant models and then photograph them, and you paint from the models. He would also dress himself up, and back in the day before fancy cameras with timers, he would pull the string. He would rig up this whole Rube Goldberg contraption to take a picture of himself. Maxfield Parrish I'm talking about now. And I just there was someone else that did a very similar thing. Anyway, stuff like that. It's what do artists do to get the job done? And I guess I'm saying today I'm not building models here today, but I am definitely, what does an artist do? Dang it, artist does whatever it does, does whatever has to be done to get the job done. I want to see if I can give some blush on her cheek here. That's too dark. Let me lighten it, try that again. There's a slight blush in the photograph, again, even though the lighting is not by any means optimal. Let's go slightly darker back here. Whew. Now I'm almost finished with her. I'll move to him, and again, the changes for him, I think, are much simpler. So I won't even broadcast that part. I want to do a little highlight on her chin down here. Whoop. By the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but the human eye is pretty much incapable of judging color and value, light, dark, and color, apart from context. In other words, I mixed up some stuff on my palette, and doggone, it looked like just the right color. And then when I put it up here on the painting, it's like, oh, it's not the right color at all. And I say that because some of you feel like that's just you that makes that mistake. Goodness, no, everybody makes that mistake. So don't beat yourself up. You can't see color apart from context. It's part of the reason why some of us use either a gray, or in my case, a brown, dull gray-brown paint palette. Whoops. I did not want to do a whoops right there. I do not want that highlight on the top of it. Want that right. Whew. Okay. Wow. Some of you might be wondering, so who is this we're watching? Oh, hi, my name is Dan. Thanks for joining me today. You can watch me many, many, many days. I do a live broadcast. And I hope I'm just about finished with this. Normally, I finish my wedding paintings right there at the wedding. Yes, Warren. Thank you I'm glad I caught that comment. Yes, I think that is the bane of most artists' existence, is the proverbial beat oneself up. No. Nothing good comes from that. Keep telling yourself, I am awesome, I am amazing. I've said before, I don't know if you caught it, the recipe for progress as an artist is little bits of, oh darn, like I'm feeling right now, like, oh crap, I should have done this better. I wish I was better. I don't know if I wish is even the right word, but oh, I made that mistake. I want to be better. Little bits of that interspersed by huge doses of, I am amazing. I am awesome. This is incredible. Wow, look what I did. Okay? And I feel like I know how most student artists speak to themselves and about themselves. First of all, because I hear it at our monthly painters group every month. They'll get up and say, mealy mouth, sad, depressed. No. Just don't do that. Just don't do it. You can feel something, but you don't have to say it. You can feel depressed, discouraged, down. There's a big difference between feeling it and saying it. Just don't say it. I can't stop you from feeling it, but I can, so to speak, stop you from saying it. Hope that makes sense to you. Big difference. When you feel a little bit discouraged, just keep it to yourself and speak encouragement to yourself. Speak out loud, and internally too, but out loud. How good you are. I am awesome. Now, that is not arrogance. If anybody's an artist, you know that I'm not recommending that you be arrogant. Because that's not what most artists struggle with. Most artists struggle with sense of inadequacy and so forth. So I'm back to the real world of painting here, where I'm using a larger brush. I want to soften the top of her head, have a little bit of light coming off like that. If you can see this or not, and I've got a bit of a dark halo around her face, which I need to fix now. I like, it has to be dark so that her face comes forward in contrast, but it can't be reflected by a curve over here, you see, so I have to do some dark coming up into the man's face. So now the man's face is disappearing a little bit because it's dark on dark, but it's a wedding portrait. The woman is the star of the show. I'd rather have her coming forward, standing out, and he's just a prop. At the wedding, right? The man is just the prop for the bride, for the beauty of the bride. Everybody comes to see the bride. The man is just there to be a support, so to speak, visual support to her. Okay, I've rambled long enough. Welcome to my studio, by the way. I like my studio a lot. My wife and I moved into this home 11 years ago. She shopped. She found the house. She was looking for two things: a house that had a master bedroom on the main floor and had a place for me to have a studio. So my studio is actually the living room of the house. And for that reason, it's sort of furnished. It's not very tidy right now, but I'll show it to you. There's the front of the house. There's a jigsaw puzzle on the front table, but stuffed chairs and, sort of decorated. It's not a typical messy artist studio. I don't like a typical messy artist studio. I like it. That's why I have antique. I'll show you the other way just for fun. That's why I have, antique oak furniture and stuff like that in my easel. So it's a very warm environment. Anyway, I don't know why I showed you all that, just because I want you guys to know where I am. Good enough? Oops, I did all that with my, sorry, I did all that. Bad camera work. Let me turn you again. Okay, so here's the room. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was zoomed in. There's the front of the house with a jigsaw puzzle and a decorated table. And I'll keep going around. There's our front door. Sorry about that. I'm making you dizzy now. And there's my antique oak furniture that I mentioned. Okay, sorry about that. Don't you love live broadcasting? Okay, that's good enough. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please pretend you did and subscribe and tell your friends about it, especially if they're artists, okay? I'll be back maybe later today, certainly by tomorrow. I've got lots of projects on the board.